Before we begin this podcast, please be advised that the following episode contains language that some listeners may find offensive and inappropriate. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect the views of the podcast producers. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the final part of Sean Reynolds' story on Voices of a Killer. Last time, a housebreak and went horribly wrong, ending in the murder of an innocent man, Jeff Rogers. As years passed and the investigation stalled, it started to look like Sean would get away with the crime unscathed. Next, we'll hear how the past was dredged up again on this episode of Voices of a Killer.
So even in prison, you get locked up for this other shit, and you've probably been sitting there going, they could just come pull me out of here any minute going, hey, we figured it out.
And they did.
And they did. They pulled you
And
out.
they did.
Whenever they called your name, they said they want to go see you at the control center probably, or whatever detective wanted to talk to you. Did you know?
Well,
Did they call you to the bubble?
yeah, they called me up to visitation.
Yeah.
But the year before that, I got caught with a meth pipe in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, fuck, here it comes.
A charge.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm about to get a...
They don't usually book the charges, though, in the courts in that county. They just do all the stuff right there internally. And you know that, right? Normally they do that, right?
Well, they give time in prison.
Well, sure, but usually they handle everything by saying, well, we're just going to make it to where your parole's extended or your release date instead of actually taking more. I mean, I'm asking you.
No, they give you more time and they extend your sentence.
Gotcha. So you thought maybe you were just going to get another charge for the pipe?
Yeah.
Well,
And they were like, what do you know about the death of Jeff Rogers? And I said, man, I don't know nothing about that. And they came and talked to me 2 more times. And on the 3rd time, I came back to the house and I called my dad. I said, hey, Pops, look, man, I'm going to need you to come up and see me on Friday. He said, well, I'll see if I can't get the day off in a couple of weeks. I said, no, you got to take this Friday off. We got to have a conversation.
Wow.
And he said, all right, I'll be there. And he came up, him and my sister. And I told him, I said, man, I fucked up big. And if you ever want to see me home again, we got to get a lawyer.
What did he say? Did he say what the hell happened?
Well, I told him everything. He went and got me a lawyer.
What did you said your sister was with him?
Yeah.
Was your sister emotional over that?
My sister's real emotional over me anyways. But yeah, she was devastated.
I figured so. My daughter loves her brother, so you got support. It sounds like you were able to call somebody to come over, and you basically told them what happened, and you decided you were going to admit to the killing.
Yeah, I wasn't never going to lie to my dad about it. You know,
had they charged you yet? And then
no.
So you confessed before they charged you?
To my dad, not to the police.
Okay. So did the police finally charge you?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I was in a minimum security prison when they put the charges on me, and they came and locked me up. They put me in the hole. They left me in the hole for 4 months, and then I finally went on out count and went to county jail.
What prison were you at?
I was the minimum security prison. I was at St. Joe.
So I
was so mad about it too.
No, good.
Oh, well, I was just mad for sitting in the hole for something that I did 12 years ago that has nothing to do with prison.
Well, they couldn't have you. The problem was they couldn't have a guy that in there for murder that hadn't been charged yet in a level 1 that can probably jump 2 fences and take off, you know?
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah. They wanted you in the one where how the first fence is 1, and then the other one's electrocution fence, and then there's another fence.
Yeah, and a ditch and some more stuff. That's
exactly why they did that, because it's okay now. He's actually for murder. We have him a level 1 where he can run easier. I mean, not that it's easy, but it's definitely easier than a level 5. I would assume so.
Sean's prolonged stints in prison add a tragic note to his case. Although he initially managed to escape capture after Jeff's murder, Sean wound up in prison anyway for a separate conviction. There's an inevitability about Sean's story, a sense that Sean was locked into such a destructive trajectory that all roads led to prison. However, the real tragedy lay with Jeff Rogers' family. They had lost a son, an uncle, a friend, and above all, an amazing human being whose potential was snuffed out all because of pointless actions by Sean and his friends. Here's a snippet from an episode of the podcast Impact Statement. covering the then unsolved case of Jeff Rogers' murder. This is Jeff's mother, Nancy, describing the last time she saw him.
I remember the last time I saw him, he would come up to the house and he'd hang out with me in the kitchen, and he'd go out on the deck when his stepdad was barbecuing and
play guitar. And
he'd go back and he'd say, he goes, "Those are some beautiful girls." He says, we got to get Mary to smile a little bit. And he'd go back there and he'd play guitar, and we've got a video we can show you that he'd put his ball cap on backwards and he'd sing a song about his little Mary, and she'd be over there just giggling, and that's what he intended to do. He was getting her to smile.
Growing up, Jeff's extended family was close, and he enjoyed time with cousins, aunts, and uncles. To say that he was well-liked would be an understatement. The homicide of Jeff Rogers was major news in the larger Kansas City metro area of 2 million people, as this report from local stations KMBC9 shows.
They kicked in the door and killed her son, but now nearly 3 months later, they're still on the loose. KMBC9's Martin Augustine live with a family's plea for help tonight. Martin?
Lara, detectives here at the Kansas City, Kansas Police Headquarters have for the last 3 months been in a desperate hunt for any scrap of information regarding the murder of Jeff Rogers, and so are, for that matter, his mother and uncle.
Being crazy, climbing on the rocks.
Nancy Euler's talking about this photo she's holding of her son Jeff Rogers dangling on a rock in Colorado, a picture that speaks volumes about him.
Oh yes, Spider-Man.
Whether it was that comic book character or rejoicing in the great outdoors, his favorite place to be, Jeff Rogers threw himself headlong into things he loved. Whether it was his guitar and music, or his family, he doted on his little nephew, or anything in Mother Nature. An uncle took him to Bull Shoals Lake once, and the moment he arrived, he never wanted to leave.
I said, "Jeff, you got a job to go to. You got to go back. We'll be back again." And sure enough, from then on, that's all it took. You know, every time, if I would go down there without him, he'd get mad.
Jeff's latest outdoor project was working on his home, but here in the early morning last April 9th, someone kicked in the door and left Jeff Rogers dead. Police think the killers came as a group.
Working on the theory that there may be 4 or 5 people involved in the crime, police say, probably means that many more people know about it. And the hope for detectives is that the conscience of one of those people will get to them.
And that can't happen soon enough for Jeff Rogers' family.
Big hole. I miss him. And I just want these people to do the right thing. He was a good, positive son.
If you know anything about Jeff Rogers' murder, detectives hope you'll call him here at Kansas City, Kansas Police Headquarters or the TIPS hotline later this month. There'll be a celebration of Jeff Rogers' life at one of his favorite places. We mentioned it in our story, Bull Shoals Lake. He was only 25 years old when he died. Reporting live, Martin Augustine, KMBC9 News. Larry.
Thanks, Martin. On August 16th, an event to raise reward money in the case will be held in Leavenworth. For details on that and a memorial fund, go to our website, kmbc.com, click on News link.
With every major news outlet responding, John, Jeff's uncle, who you heard there in the news report, became the spokesperson for the family, a task he took very seriously. It was the work of him and his mother, Nancy, that ensured that Jeff's case stayed in the news cycle every couple of years. John researched and applied for the state governor's reward, and $5,000 was pledged as a reward for information leading to an arrest. But he didn't stop there. He organized fundraisers and got the reward up to $9,000. Not only this, but through the assistance of the Kansas City metro area Crime Stoppers was where John's family made a breakthrough. Crime Stoppers is a worldwide organization with over 1,200 programs globally and over 400 in the United States. Their key operating structure is to take anonymous tips and to pay cash rewards to those who come forward with information leading to an arrest. 10 years on, Sean believed that the murder was firmly in his past, and he focused instead on serving out his current sentence. But the past resurfaced when 2 visiting investigators interrogated Sean and brought up the name he hoped he'd never hear again, Jeff Rogers. This was all due to information that was brought to the authorities through Crime Stoppers. 10 years of relentless fighting through tragedy, suffering, and never giving in, It was the efforts of Jeff's family that led to Sean and his co-defendant confessing to Jeff Rogers' murder, putting a 10-year-old cold case to bed and bringing closure to Jeff's family. Following this, Sean's prison term was renewed. After talking to others with life imprisonment for murder, I'm struck by the leniency of this sentence. As Sean lucked out with a lighter sentence, his release date is within his reach. After the break, we find out more about Sean's sentence and his hopes for being released.
So you get out, you go to trial for everything, and you plead guilty or not guilty?
No, I did not take it to trial. I knew that with my history, if I took it to trial, I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't realize that whenever they're out weighing everything, they're like, well, I want to plead not guilty. They do that, and then they throw the book at you, and you don't ever get out of prison. You spend the rest of your life in there.
Yeah.
But you actually knew that you've been in the system, and you knew I just need to take this and see if I can't get a good, 10 or 15 year sentence. And you actually got an 8-year sentence, which, wow, that's crazy. And you're lucky over that, right?
Absolutely. I'm 100% lucky.
So did you ever have any of the victims' family mad at you and reach out to you?
I wish that they would have reached out to me because I would like to have a conversation with them.
If they were listening to this, what would you say?
What a fucking shit show my life has been, and I am so sorry. When I got sentenced, they asked me if I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to take away from the memory of my victim by trying to justify or downplay what actually happened. You know what I mean? It's already bad enough that I'm getting some play on my sentence.
Yeah, I'm blown away by your sentence, actually.
I actually got the most.
Well, so the only one that I've seen is comparatively that they didn't get a lot of time is my episode 1, which is Kevin Myers. He got 12 years, broke into his neighbor's house just to rob him, but the neighbor pulled the gun and he ended up shooting and killing him. He got 12 years, which, most people really do. They get 25 to, life or sometimes life without on shit like that,
If my life wouldn't have been in jeopardy, and thank God we were drunk and didn't plan this, a lot went into consideration.
So let me ask you get out, are you right back on smoking crack and doing what you want?
Absolutely not. No, I'm going straight to work.
Well, you know what's going to be at work, right?
What's going to be at work?
All the drugs that you like.
Well, they got all the drugs I like in prison, and I don't use them here.
Oh, you don't? Okay, well, that's good.
No, I don't. I smoke pot if I can. Sometimes I'll smoke some K2. I don't do hardcore narcotics. I
ain't gonna lie. I'm gonna tell you right now, I think K2 is the worst shit ever. I think that stuff is just so fucking strong. It's so wacky. I think it's horrible, man. I ain't gonna lie. Pot, I'm all good with that one, but K2, holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Man, I just too much shit.
I've seen it all myself.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I don't have a fentanyl addiction because I'm watching that, and definitely glad I'm not hooked on meth.
Well, so you get out when you go up for parole?
I'm thinking, because when I get to Kansas, they're going to tell me. So just doing the mathematics, I think it's like the beginning of 27.
And they ran your time concurrent with the robbery stuff in Missouri. So while you're doing the Missouri time, you're actually also doing the time for the murder, right?
Yep.
But once the time runs out for Missouri, you'll be shipped to Kansas to finish out that actual sentence, right?
Yeah.
And then what year would you get out?
I'm thinking 2027.
Wow.
My Missouri time runs out in like 2.5 months.
Yeah. Sean, you get to Kansas, you finish your time. What is your first plan?
Like I said, I'm ready to go to work. I don't have any employable skills except for I'm strong and I know how to clean. Yeah. And actually, I do know how to cook, but I don't want to go cook.
Yeah.
Maybe go down to a temp service or something. But maybe somebody will hear this and go, "Oh, man, that's the person we want."
You just want to get out there and work hard?
That's all.
Well, I tell you what, the world needs hard workers. That's for sure. Not everybody works hard, so I hope that you get out and do that.
It's been so disgusting having to lay around and beg my family for money.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I hope that you do the right thing when you get out. I think that you were super lucky with your sentence, and I hope you take advantage of that.
I absolutely am. Thank you.
Yep. Take it easy, boy.
Bye.
But this is not where this story ends. When a family faces a traumatic loss, people often don't know what to say or do. When the funeral is over and the immediate crisis is over, people tend to fade. Sometimes it's harder to share the memories with each other, so people turn inside themselves. And sometimes, honestly, it's just uncomfortable. But that's not what happened with Jeff's family or with his friends. Not only did they get together to celebrate Jeff's life, but they continued to fight for justice. And while the sentence that Sean received may have been lighter than expected, the fact that they never gave up on their pursuit of justice is what really stands out. I want to leave the final word to Nancy, Jeff's mom, to talk about just how important the role of Crime Stoppers played in bringing Sean and his co-defendants to justice, and despite how desperate the situation may seem, to never give up hope.
Son, my oldest, Jeff Rogers, was murdered here in Kansas City, Kansas on April the 9th, 2008, home invasion.
Someone came into where he lived?
They kicked his door in a little after midnight. He fought with them. They shot him, stabbed him, and took off running.
He was alone in the house?
He was alone in the house.
Corey was 22, and he was walking home from Quick Trip off of 39th and Independence. His friend came up behind him, put a knife to the back of his neck. Corey jerked his head this way, and it caused a gouge into the side of his neck. He jumped up, causing 2 cuts along the top of his legs, and started turning around, and the knife went in here and came out here.
Corey Lakovich and Jeff Rogers never met. They died violently 5 years apart. But today, years after their deaths, their mothers still tell their stories and the role the TIPS hotline played in finding their killers. Nancy Euler waited more than a decade for an arrest to be made in her son's murder.
Got the phone call. We think we know something. Something was called into the Crime Stoppers. We think we know. And it was about a week later, and they made their arrest. And I am grateful for the person that called in.
She told me that she thinks about the break in her son's case every time she sees a new homicide reported.
Even if you think you know something, call it in, get your code. And like I said, it might not be anything, but maybe it puts part of the puzzle together.
On the next episode of Voices of a Killer.
You did 19 years on a murder, got released, and then committed 2 more murders and went back to prison.
Fell in love with the first person that I ever loved in my life was a girl that I met after I was 16 and got a car and got out and running around. She accidentally got killed. And I stopped believing in God at that point, sitting at her gravestone at night, looking at her picture on the gravestone and thinking about life. And there was nobody I wanted to kill any more in my life than I wanted to kill God, because he just killed one of the most innocent people on earth.
What would you want people to think about you?
Well, I'm not the same person I used to be. Now, if somebody gives me a problem in here, they can still get killed. Don't get me wrong.
I want to thank Sean for sharing his story with us today. His ability to be open and honest is what makes this podcast so special. I also want to thank the family of Jeff Rogers. If you are interested in learning more about Jeff and his memory, please visit the links in our show notes below. That's a wrap on this episode of Voices of a Killer. A big shout out to Sonic Futures, who handled the production, audio editing, music licensing, and promotion of this podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, make sure to visit our website at voicesofakiller.com. There you can find previous episodes, transcripts, and additional information about the podcast. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach new listeners. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to share more stories with you in the future. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Toby, and we'll see you next time on Voices of a Killer.